Good afternoon. How may I help you?
CallRevu's Call Vision means that right now I'm analyzing your digital marketing spend through a unique caller tracking number that lets you know the source that brought the customer to your site. Multitasking. It's my jam.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the third of a 3-series webinar we've been holding all summer long with our friends at CallRevu and Relevant Dealer. We've been talking about GA4 now that it's live. Today we're going to talk about the 5 things you want to be doing now that it's live. And we've got Corey Wright with CallRevu. He's Director of Operations. And we've also got our good friend, Steve Lories with Relevant Dealer. He is their CEO. So thanks everyone for joining, and we are excited that you're here.
All right. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Hey, we are excited. We're here. We're excited.
Hey, so this trailer for this event was probably one of the best pieces of content I think ASOTU has
If
ever
you
made.
have not seen the trailer for this event, after you're done watching this, go to our LinkedIn, go scroll down just a little bit and go check out the guys just talking about what we're going to be talking about. It'll just brighten your day up just a little bit.
Well, that's what they say. Well, every time you want somebody to remember, you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. So when you go check out the trailer, it'll just tell you what they just told you. Look, these last 2 webinars, kind of like speed round, new format. There's been really great response because our desire is that you come in, you don't fall asleep in minute like 48 of a 55 or 60-minute webinar, but you just get what you need and you get out. So we're going to get you to the content. But Kyle, we've been traveling and we get to go in a lot of dealerships around the country, and we've just really witnessed firsthand as dealers and marketing directors start to log in and start to recalibrate how they're going to look at their data, how they're going to really analyze. And we actually just witnessed it just this week where it's like, okay, wait, what is this now? What should we be doing? And so these are questions that a lot of people are asking. And for every person that asks the question, there's probably another 25 that just hasn't asked yet.
Well, and it's wild because, we've had GA4 for over a year now, almost a year and a half, but the intention put around it by especially like some of the industry partners, the web providers, the third parties that are integrating into marketing spends or customer acquisition, conversion, all of that are still coming to the table. So there's this time gap on data and just the learning curve on making sure that you have the right things done in the account, set up, connected to the right things to make sure that Google can connect all the signals so that whether it's ads that you're looking at or whether it's understanding your organic or your direct traffic or whether or not the site's converting, all of those little things are just like resetting up a whole new structure and then being able to analyze that data. And I think we're still as an industry just in what I would call quote unquote setup mode, which is even some of the best marketers. Even some of the best marketers that I'm talking to are just going that, yesterday was finding that, misspellings in events and things like that are hard, making it hard to categorize or compare or anything like that. So I would just say, like, to the industry, there's nothing that over the last 3 months or even the next 3 months that is going to be cataclysmic to your business, but taking the right steps, as we're going to talk about today, to do the right things, to set up the account, to make sure that as these providers come online, as providers like CallRevu give access to more and more event tracking, more and more detailed information through the events, that you have the ability over time to really inspect the data and then make quality decisions off of that. So I'm excited to talk to Steve and Corey today, just about like, hey, here's some practical stuff that you can do. Like, this is definitely the get out your notebook one, right? You can go listen back to it. You can get out your notebook, but it's like, get out your notebook, get out your screen recorder, get out your screen grab, and take those little slide shots. We'll obviously send you the deck. We'll send you all the recording on a couple days from now if you're watching, but make sure that you're paying attention to this one because it's a good practical one. So
I think it's time to bring everybody up.
Bring the fam in.
Open the door out and let anybody in here.
There they are. I love it. Corey, Steve, welcome back to ASOTU Edge Webinars. Really appreciate you guys being here. I want to kick it over to Steve as we kick off. You've been kind of walking us through a lot of these accounts, and today I think we're going to really look in and dive into actually what's happening in a GA4 account, look at the setups and make sure like people really understand exactly what's going on. So what are you seeing and experiencing with all the dealers you're talking to over the last 2 months since everybody's kind of been like, I guess we got to actually do this thing?
Yeah, so it's amazing, right? So despite, as you said, right, we've had access to this for a year, almost a year and a half, but we're still seeing for a lot of dealerships that, you know, getting those basic things done and getting those basic things implemented are still a bit of a question mark for them, right? So if you haven't seen the other two webinar series, piece of the webinar series that we've done, right, go to ASOTU.com, check it out. The links are there, right? Good information about getting some of those basic things taken care of. We're talking about those events and we're talking about those conversions and some of those other pieces. So today what we want to do is really twofold. One is make sure that the other accounts are connected. The other Google properties that you're relying on, the things that you're going to care the most about, that those are connected to your GA4 account so you can get better insights and get better information. But then also take a look at the, how this all normalizes inside of call reviews, market vision reporting, so you can see in very simple terms of what's working and what's not working. So all these things work together. Having these accounts connected will make those reports better. But having the information getting into GA4, even if you're not ready to start analyzing it today, start getting that data flowing into it. So that way, when you are ready, when you are looking for those insights, that historical information is there and ready for you.
Awesome. Let's get to it, because I think you and Corey have a little bit of data to share with us, a little bit of like actually what's happening in accounts. So let's just walk through, like, go for it. Here we go. What are we setting up today?
So yeah, very first thing, right? GA4 added this little helper inside of the admin. So if you just go to that little gear icon in the bottom left-hand corner and hit admin, it's going to take you to your view for both the account and the property side, right? On the right-hand side, right up top, easy to find, is the setup assistant. Okay, that setup assistant is, when you click on it, it's going to take you to a list of 7 quick items that you can do to make sure that everything's set up. Right? We see, and we're looking through hundreds, I mean, literally hundreds of GA4 accounts. And it's amazing how many that we go into. And the first thing we do is check this out. And there's step 2 of the steps done or 3 of the steps done, but really very, very, very few, like less than 10 that we've seen where all 7 steps are checked off. So we thought, man, it's important that people, well, number 1, know that it's there. Number 2, understand how to make a couple of those connections. That might be a little bit harder to do, right? So one of the first things that you're, as you see there, is the data is the Google Signals. That's the number 1 thing on that list. That is a way to connect it with Google Signals, which is kind of a separate property of Google's that allows you to be able to get that demographic data, right? So you know that age and the genders information, and there's no cost to getting that information, right? It's just a click, you acknowledge it, and then that data starts flowing immediately for you. And again, it's available for you. Even if you don't want to use it today, it's available for future use as well, right? The second piece with that is you go back to that home screen of it and scroll down a little bit. You'll see the Google Ads links, okay? That's on the next slide. There you go. So what that does allows you to connect your Google Ads accounts to your GA4. Now, without that, you're not going to be able to see any campaign level data, okay? One of the things that changed from Universal Analytics to GA4 is in the past, you used to be able to see things like keywords and ad group names. Well, those 2 things have gone away, but you still have the ability to see the ads ID number. So you can still compare it to your Google Analytics to your Google Ads that way, right? So once you click on that, though, it allows you to be able to link this directly to your Google Ads. So to do that, you have to have a login to both. The person that's making that link has to be able to log into GA4 and to Google Ads with that same Google account.
Yeah,
okay?
I think that's important because just to recognize, hey, a lot of dealers actually don't have access to their ads account because their agency doesn't give them access. One, if your agency or someone isn't giving you access, just put a little question mark on that one. But if they aren't, make sure that your agency or whoever's running your ads has access to be an editor at the property level. So that way that can get connected. So you as a reader of the data can actually connect that up. So if for some reason you don't have that same access in that same login, make sure and get it. And if for some reason you can't get it, put a little question mark there, come back to it later, and please and ask your provider to make sure and connect those accounts.
Yeah, and you're right. It's absolutely important, right? Google absolutely says that if you are going to provide paid search service to any business, right, then as a Google partner, you need to provide access to them. It's their account, not yours. Even though you set it up and you're managing on a daily basis, right? It belongs to the dealership, not to the ad agency. So it's absolutely not only in their best practice, but it's actually a policy in becoming a Google partner with them, right? So having those. The other advantage to that is those conversions that we talked about in that last webinar. You can use those conversions inside of Google Ads as long as they're connected, right? So Google's got that crazy algorithm everybody knows about, right? And it allows the system to be able to maximize the efficiency of the ads that you're placing by doing it on conversions, either by doing it as a conversion value or just that a conversion occurred, right? So having those two talk to each other means that you have an opportunity to save money because you're not wasting spend on getting all these conversions you don't want or all these traffic for the sake of traffic, right? So again, you just have to, whoever's got access to both just needs to hit the link there, and then inside of Google Ads, hit the link as well, and that'll join the two accounts.
Perfect. Awesome.
All right. The next one of them on there, is the towards the bottom, and this is one of the little lesser known ones. It's amazing how many people we talk to that they get Google Ads, they get all that. But when it comes to Search Console, there's still a lot of people that don't even know that Search Console exists, right? What Search Console really is the organic side of Google search. And it's, again, a free property. So a little verification step that you have to do. You can either send the script to your website provider, right? And they'll be able to put that on your site. But it'll let you know how many times that your dealership or search terms that you care about are actually being looked for. And what it means in terms of how many times that your site showed versus how many times it got clicks on, right? So it's really, really powerful. If your SEO provider isn't talking to you about that, ask them, right? Because it's great data. Well, this allows you to be able to bring the Search Console data into GA4 and be able to see it. Very similar to what we saw in UA in the previous version of analytics, right? But so important to be able to get that set up and established with it.
Yeah. What can you go a little bit more into how that might impact the way that data is able to be read in the GA4 account? Because some people may be familiar with what's in Search Console, but maybe not be familiar with why that impacts the ability to read the data on the GA4 account.
Absolutely. That's a great question, right? So one of the pieces with that is that, we talked about those events and we talked about those conversions. Right. So it really doesn't matter how many events you've got coming in your account. You want as many things that you can measure as possible in there. But those key things are what you're flagging as conversions. At the bare minimum, the leads, the calls, the chats, those hard conversions. People that have viewed photos, people that have gone to specific VDPs that you care about. Right. All those other conversions, you now can tie that behavior back to what's happening organically from an SEO perspective. Yep. Right. So when your SEO company, or if you're doing it in-house, right, is looking at what terms that we want to optimize certain pages for, that's a great resource to be able to see, hey, these search terms we got out there maybe 30,000 times and got 30,000 impressions, but we only got 6 clicks. Right. And of those 6 people that visited the site, how many conversions do we get?
Well, and I think this is especially key, and maybe Corey can talk to this, but on the phone call side, so much of organic and direct traffic, especially when it comes from Google My Business, when you're looking at the keywords searched and the way that you're presented online, are actually driving residual service and parts conversations. And if your phone call provider, which is the highest converting lead type when you're looking at organic traffic to service and parts, is typically the phone. If your phone provider is sending those events back into Google Analytics and you connected Search Console, you now have a really, really clear idea exactly which things from an organic and direct perspective are giving you the most volume, especially when it comes to service and parts, because the majority of those conversations don't happen from on-site conversion, right? Corey, what are you seeing on the CallRevu side that alludes to that?
That's a great question. And I think it comes back to something we talked about just a little bit earlier when you had mentioned, hey, if your digi ad provider isn't giving you access to Google, the GA4, that you need that access to not only see what's going on in there, but to know what you don't know. And what I mean by that is when you look at Google Analytics 4, it can be super confusing. And one thing I'd recommend, it might not be the most popular thing, but it helped me a ton, was if you don't have access to education like what we're providing in this webinar, Google does have a great built out university. You can go get Google certified, and it doesn't take that long. It took me a handful of nights to go through there, but it allows you to get a better feel when you have those conversations with your digital ad provider. And then if you say, hey, I need somebody to handle this for me, that's one thing. You could also say, I'm not as good at reading these reports. I don't have the time to dedicate to dig into these reports, but at least I know that I've got my signals turned on. I've got the right, the ads linked, and I have, everything turned on to where I say, I just need condensed reporting. And that's where we come in. And that's what I want to share. If you could pull up some of the screenshots that we've pulled out, because we want to give you kind of a working application of why this data is so important. So this is a shot of our demographic reporting, and what this is enabled by is what Steve just talked about, which is signals. Signals is critical to turn on so you have this rich data. But something that a lot of people don't realize is that with GA4, we get this rich data from what they called the ads personalization that everybody has heard about. But there's another chunk of that is really important to also keep in mind, which is obtained from something called conversion modeling. And conversion modeling is basically filling in the gap of saying, and connecting the dots of saying, okay, we saw them do a couple different things, but they had their ad personalization turned off. So we use that in combination with what they call holdback validation, which just in simple terms, that means using the data that we got from all of the customers who had ad personalizations turned on, we use that data to then predict what these other customers are doing. And I read a bunch of studies around that made me feel like, wow, this is something that dealers want to know about. Because it says that, and this blew my mind, I figured that the customers who had ad personalization turned off wouldn't be your best conversions. But they're actually, if you add up all the studies out there, and you kind of take the average, it's a wash. They're converting at about the same rate. So it says they're both important. But I say all that to say you need to have those concrete metrics which come through the phone. And so what you see here is that culmination of everything that you're getting from not only CallRevu, but GA4. So you can analyze if you're that person who says, I really don't have the time to take 3 hours to get into GA4 and look at multiple different reports to connect the dots. We funnel it all into one report where you can see your age group, your traffic by channel, and you can walk down, hey, what do my sessions look like compared to my active users, my new users, and so on and so forth, the leads, the chats that matter so much, so you can be educated in that conversation when you're talking about money.
That's awesome. Hey, I do want to remind everyone that if you are watching, on the right-hand side of your screen, there is a chat option there, and we will be taking questions here at the end of the show, and we'll respond to them afterwards if we can't get to all of them. So make sure and head over there, hit that little chat bubble, and feel free to ask us questions, and our team will curate, and we can answer those questions live if you are watching right now. So make sure and get into that. All right, Steve. I feel like we got 3 out of 5. What's 4 and 5?
In respect to
the 5 things every dealer should be doing right now.
Yeah. So again, next piece of this is on the second page of this report, right? Because I think CallVision does a beautiful job of, or State Market Vision does a beautiful job of displaying this information, right? So what this is doing is it's taking, CallRevu is taking this data and again, simplify it. Now, if you don't have a D&I solution, right, and then one of the things that you're going to miss here is those calls, right? So a D&I solution has to be part of your landscape for this, right? Without a D&I tool, what you're going to have, the only other metric that you can possibly use is what's called click to call, okay? Which means that somebody clicked on a link that has TEL or a phone number that's embedded inside of that link. And, we've often said that's better than nothing. but unfortunately, it doesn't tell you a whole lot. Number one, it's not going to tell you about any calls that happen on the desktop, because nobody clicks to call a phone number that's on a desktop, right? Because there's no phone connected to it. And on a mobile device, what we often see is that about 60% of those clicks don't actually become calls. So we're taking a small segment. Most dealers, you see about 50% of your traffic is coming from a mobile device, right? So if you got 20,000 users coming to your site a month, well, maybe 10,000 are going to use mobile phone. And then of the ones that do click to call, right, 60% of those are not actually making a call. So you got a small segment and flawed numbers, right? So where D&I comes in is that it actually is taking the when the customer makes that phone call, when they actually dial that number, right? Good Solutions are listing those calls, identifying it by department, right? As we see in the bottom part of this report, sales calls versus service call. What, are they setting appointments or not? But then we're also seeing then the calls that we're able to understand how many calls aren't connecting by making those comparisons, right? But we know these are actual calls. So everybody that calls a number that's on the site is coming into this reporting, which makes it fantastic, right?
Well,
So
and what I love about the ASC events, which we had Brian Pash on the last webinar, is it's actually enabling and there's been a really, really good thought pattern to, was a call made, right? Was a call connected? Was a call engaged for a certain amount of time? And did a call actually end up in some sort of action, whether that be an appointment or a schedule or a next step? And so those events being fed back into GA, whether you're looking at an aggregator report like this or the reports in GA, because there's been the time taken by the ASC Council or Automotive Standards Council, ASC, you get that like super dynamic view of actually what's going on in the calls.
Agreed, right? And we see this in this report. So like, as we look at the bottom, the number one source of sales calls was organic search. They had 11 sales calls off of their organic search. We compare that to the top, they had 62 calls that came in from organic search. But only 19 of those calls, 30 of those calls between sales calls and service calls were for either sales or service. Those other 32 calls were either probably disconnected, or they're robocalls, or they're asking, it's a dealer trade or some other administrative call that's coming in that really doesn't matter, right?
Well, and that's the beautiful part of when you have a complete solution and you can actually, triage and not only stop the bleeding of these customers that you're missing, but this is where you're in those big conversations. You're wondering, okay, I'm spending $7,000-8,000 on digital advertising. And you look at calls, you see 24 phone calls, and you may think, okay, well, I divide that out and I can get a cost per if I do that basic math. But then you can get a cost per for how many you're missing. Because if you log into, say, one of our tracking and monitoring solutions like Sales Vision, that allows you to drill down on, why did I miss that call? Was it a training opportunity because we didn't appoint that call? And now you're tagging $1 to how valuable that was based on the channel that you see in this report. And the next report is campaigns. And that's one of the big ones you want to look at.
Yep.
In this drill down, now you can see a view of, okay, what we just saw on channel, but down to the campaign level. And that's where we get to use our kind of special technology to break down that barrier. And this is why phone calls matter so much, is now we can tie this down to a campaign as to what campaigns were working so well. And Steve was kind of schooling me on this over the week on how he's worked with so many dealers who have invested so much money, or their digital advertising partner has invested a ton of money in something as simple as the dealership name. And I thought it was really cool to see that there were so many instances where dealers were paying for the dealership name and nobody else was bidding on it. And they were basically wasting money that would have came organically. And Steve made the point of they could kind of lift and shift that budget to somewhere else, because we know we're not getting calls. And if you look in this chart here, the dealership general, it didn't produce
That's on
any.
the next page. Yeah, and this one. Yep. Sorry.
So you literally you don't see any of the appointments you're getting there.
Yeah, and this is the other, as you said, right? This is one of those areas where we see a lot of challenges for dealers, right? Is that because this is something that's evolving. Google is evolving so fast right now in every aspect, right? Not just GA4. We also see it in Looker Studios. We also see it in Search Console, the changes that they're making there. And we're seeing it in inline search, right? So if you're looking, when you see that you've got money that you're spending on what they call a dealership general campaign, that's basically you're spending money to bid on the dealership's name, right? You're taking care of your name and your local backyard. And sometimes there's a purpose for that. Yep. If you've got a highly competitive metro, like you're in a big metro with a lot of players there, and you've got competitors that are bidding on your name, then yeah, it makes sense to be there, right? But we can't lose track of the actual consumer's behavior, especially if you've got a unique dealership name, right? And someone that's typing in that dealership's name, they're not looking at that screen to see what all is out there. They're looking for that specific information. So they're going to click on that. So spending, half or more than half your budget to protect your name doesn't make sense, right? Especially if nobody is bidding on it, right? So even in this last week, we saw that, and Corey and I were sharing this or looking through this yesterday, right? We took a few examples that are local to where he's at. And we found is when we searched for these big dealership names, that all the ads were coming at the bottom of that search results page, right? So you've got the great big Google My Business listing there on the right-hand side. You've got all the great information that is able to about the organic listings, a couple others that were showing organically. But then at the bottom of the page was when the sponsored listings came in. So this store, which we're using it as an example, right, they're spending over $6,000 a month. And this is a screenshot. This is the view of what that $6,000 got them.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
So I see that they got at the end of the month, they got 24 phone calls, right? 7 leads, 7 chats. That's what that $6,000 and change bought them. But while it sounds very exciting that they received 24 calls, we look at the bottom, they had 4 sales calls.
Oh,
wow.
Well, let's do this. So we're at getting close to time.
Mm-hmm.
We're about 30 minutes. If you have a question, put it in the chat. We do have a chat here, a question from the audience. I'd like to read it and see if we can get an answer or two. It's from Art Bratton. He says, one issue we found was that some of the events were not being counted because the ASC_form_submission event wasn't set to be a conversion. The analytics team said that they purposefully had it off because anytime they were sending that event, they were also sending either ASC for submission_sales or _service. And the question is, should it still be set to conversion?
Yeah. So again, it's all about what it is that you want to measure, right? So if you're not caring about those service leads or those service events, then having just the sales one enacted makes total sense, right? But when you're trying to look at programs from a holistic basis, you're going to have leads that are possibly going to come in that are contact us, about us forms. So you want to be sure that those are being tagged as a method that you want to, because those are probably not going to be tagged as sales because they're not directly sales, right? But it doesn't mean that they're not using that form to try to communicate with the sales team.
We have another question. Go ahead, Kyle.
I'll just follow on that. So basically what's happening in the ASC spec is that ASC form submission and ASC form submission _department are firing literally at the exact same time. So if you do use one, like if you use just the submission event, you will not want to use any of the department level events. For me, it really comes down to how granular you want to get with your reporting. And I would say the more granular, the better. Actually, the department event is really the one that I think you could do. Always, if you want to set up what's called an exploration in GA4, you could look at your total submissions overall via that exploration and not see it as a quote unquote conversion. But you're going to want to be able to send conversions to campaigns based on the connection. So you're going to want to inform your service campaigns based on service connections and sales campaigns based on sales connections. So I would recommend not turning on the ASC form submission event. However, there are some dealers that are choosing to go with that as opposed to the department level submissions.
Yeah.
There we go. Ooh,
And I think it
whatever
really
that
comes
was.
down to how you're reporting on it, right? What information you want to glean from what it is that you're reporting on. And if you got questions, reach out to Corey, ourselves, right? So that way we can help walk you through this on a more one-to-one basis if you'd like.
All right, let's get one more question in here because there's a follow-up on that one. But let me give one new one, and again, encourage the conversation to continue after this webinar. That's the point, to get information out there, get the questions flowing so we can get some things fixed. What are you seeing for D&I reporting on the Performance Max campaigns? We're worried that Google will push a lot of brand advertising that will cause us to pay for traffic that we've gotten organically since the AI is more hands off.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and we've seen that. You know, and what you're asking is for a much larger explanation here, right? But it all comes down to how the Performance Max campaigns are set up. That's the simplest way to say that, right? You want to make sure that your campaigns are not targeting generic dealership terms, that you're not doing it for generic brand terms either, such as Honda or Toyota, because that is a huge dragnet that, yeah, you're going to get a lot of traffic from that, but it's not going to convert. And you're going to see your cost per conversion, which is the ultimate measurement, right? That number greatly increase, where it's costing you $70, $80, $200, $300 on a per conversion basis. And really anything over 30, you want to start questioning.
Well, there you go. Look, it's so good when you get to the end of a webinar and it feels like there's still more to say, which is great. That's a great place to leave because the conversation can continue. Again, the reason we have these is to get the conversation going. And Corey, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today and really just sharing your expertise and understanding with the broader industry, because we know that when we attack these problems in an intelligent and coordinated way, we actually all get better and the consumer wins, which means all of us win.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Good afternoon. How may I help you?
When Scott here, alert is busy. Alert, I can capture alert over 30 pieces of information so you never miss an opportunity.
And your last
alert.
name? Great.
All right, everyone, that is a wrap on an amazing, very informative and insightful 3-part series with our partners at CallRevu and Relevant Dealer. If you missed any of the first ones, the first 2, we're going to be sending that back out on Friday along with the recap for today as well. You can also check them out on our website at ASOTU.com under the section for ASOTU Edge Webinars. And that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We've enjoyed it.